This is another instance of don't check your calendar. Like, this is a new day for another one of our programs at the Full Tilt Dynasty Podcast Network. We've just had to rearrange everything. This is, of course, the Fantasy Walkabout Season 2, Episode 1. And if you're joining live, you'll notice that there's 3 people on the screen today. I put them up in the wrong order here, but that's fine.
Oh, fuck
yeah, there you go. Back down. Back
one
down.
job.
Yeah.
I'm always on bottom.
With the fantasy phrasing.
Look, I know what I said.
There's a little bit of a different vibe here today on the Walkabout, but look, the off season has kind of just started. I guess for some it started a little while ago, but for us it's kind of just started. And of course, with me over there at 7 in the morning in Aussie land is Tom_Lee92 joining us again. And now down below is Big Billy FF, all the way from building shelves and lamps onto the Walkabout.
Yeah, guys, if y'all can see in my camera, I built this lamp today. And I realized because my webcam is so shitty, it looks like I just have like a portal to heaven right there.
A blur. Look, today's already been kind of a wild morning, but if you're new to the Fantasy Walkabout, this is a process-based program where we don't look as deep into their numbers. We look at more in the process of going around and improving your teams on teams that you haven't just drafted. This is a lot of focus on teams that have been drafted already, that have been around for a few years, and you don't know what to do with them because a lot of advice circles around draft value. How do you manage a draft? Moving up, moving down, what's their startup value? It's not a lot of what do you do when your team's 4 years old and now you're in between, right? So that's what we like to do here, and we're going to do some of that today. Today we have some trade flashbacks, so we're going to look back at trades we made over the last little bit and see if we want to cry or die or if we're happy, right? We're going to get into Gabe Davis, which is why Billy is here today. On Tuesday night, we didn't get as much into Gabe Davis as we had wanted to because, of course, me, Billy, and Jacob always run out of time.
Yeah.
We're going to do Rondale Moore. Is he actually a buy or is he a sell or do you hold? We're going to get into those 2 players specifically. Look, we got our hard Yaka coming back, right? Which is the, process conversation. We're going to have a punish a Tolly, right? We have a lot of different we've got a lot of different things happening here today. So we're going to take a second. When we come back, we're going to get into our first topic, which is do we care? Which is how we always kick off. And we're going to kick off season 2 here, everybody. Let's go. And of course, early on, Toronto Dave's in the chat as always. Has been
what a man
never sleeps
since day. Literally, he actually doesn't. Love addressing strategy for established teams versus only startups. This is something that Tom Lee and I talked about when we put this show together. Is that it drove us nuts that all you see is the startup value, because good luck trying to trade a startup value for a player that's, you've had for 4 years. It's not going to happen. Best podcast production in the business. Look, I try. All right. We're working on it. We slapped some stuff together last minute for this one because I forgot some stuff, but hey, we're here. So first off, do we care? Do we give a shit? This Brady thing is running rampant. No one knows what's happening. We're kind of reporting live on it, if you would. I'm not going to believe it until he says it, right? Yeah. Like, I'm not going to do it. But if it does happen, it'll be the first time the NFL will be without a Manning or Brady at quarterback since 1998. So that's pretty insane. I was not living in Winnipeg at that time. I was still back home in Ontario at that time.
I was barely living.
And watching football.
I think I actually was in Canada at that time. So,
see, there we go.
Yeah.
It's insane, the implications of
there must always be a full tilter in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah. Someone's got to be holding down the fort.
Winter is coming. Look, I don't know what to do with the rest of that team, right? With any of your assets, the Leonard Fournettes, the Godwins. The only one that's really got a for sure thing right now is Evans because he has a contract.
Yeah.
I don't know what to do. So as that news, comes along, we'll address that. Agent came out not confirming or denying. Yeah, that's what I was mean. That's what I meant, right? Like I'm not going to believe it until he says it. The guy was the top 5 across the board, pretty much everywhere. Do we care? How much do we care about this news right now as it affects dynasty values? Like I've already seen trades go through.
Yeah,
I've seen Kyle Trask get traded for. People are trying to send me everything they can for me to take their
going
Trask.
up on the block everywhere.
Yeah. So how much is this affecting your immediate reaction? Because the walkabout, we've never been able to address a retirement immediately as it's kind of happening. So how is this affecting your dynasty teams? I'm going to start with Billy because he's the guest here. How is it immediately affecting your dynasty teams? Are you immediately trying to trade your receivers? What are you trying to do?
The only player on the Buccaneers right now that I am actively devaluing because of this move is Leonard Fournette. I think Godwin and Evans, both of them are in a situation. Godwin is probably going to go in as an alpha next year, provided he's healthy off the ACL, which he should be. ACLs are now like rolled ankles at this point after Akers with the Achilles. So I think we're at this point now where if Godwin's gone, which I think a lot of us expect he will be, he's going to be fine. He's going to be an alpha somewhere. Mike Evans has proven to do it with anyone in the world. I'm not worried about Mike Evans. A lot of Leonard Fournette's value was propped up in fantasy by how good that team was.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he is the only player on that squad that actively gets worse by a worse team. So I think if I have Leonard Fournette anywhere, he's going down the block right away. Like I'm trying to get rid of him as quick as I can.
See, I think I'm going to hold on to Leonard Fournette for as long as possible because
what a crazy
well, this is why, because we don't know. So for me, if Arians were to leave, it would change everything for me. But there are some vet quarterbacks out there that they can bring in to maybe give this team one more year. It's not going to be Brady, obviously, to his level, but there are some vet quarterbacks, and it's Arians that I think is keeping his value. And Mike Evans is. If Arians leaves, I'm terrified of Mike Evans at that point because that's his. That's his specialty is the downfield, deep ball, whatever. Tom Lee, what are you doing, and how are you addressing it?
So we need to care, right? Because it's probably the best quarterback from all of our lives, leaving a team possibly. But from a value point of view, Evans, for me, as long as there's volume in that offense, I don't really care who the offensive coordinator is or who the head coach is. He'll still be fine. So not really doing anything there. Fournette was a UFA anyway. So he could have stayed, could have left. His positioning was up in the air as it was already. So his value is kind of safe and insured from this. His upside and in that team doesn't exist if Brady retires, but I'm not too concerned about them. I'm not really looking to trade any of these pieces straight away. If the word comes out that Arians is staying, like you said, cheeky buy lows on a few veteran quarterbacks could be a sneaky move. Throw a few thirds and seconds out there and pick up whatever. I'd be looking at, even within the division, Cam Newton, Matt Ryan, sliding on over and filling a space for a little bit, even on that ridiculous contract. But
that's
just one to watch.
I think it's just going to be tough. And Dave makes a good point. I don't like trading. Trade. I'm going to rephrase this. I don't like trades involving players with such uncertainty.
Yes.
Now, Tom Lee and I talked about this in season 1, where we like trading for those guys, but again, it's always on price. And one thing you'll notice on the show, we hate the everything coming with he has the potential, he has the upside, like he has that gets tagged on to everything.
Yeah,
like it's tagged on to everything. So we like to take that phrase and add context because that's important. Because there's 375,421 wide receiver 3s that have wide receiver 1 upside. All right,
all upside. Yeah,
relax. So we get it. We understand when we discuss this, right? It's super flex. It's PPR, that's our base for conversation. And we understand that there's upside with the players we're talking about, right?
Yeah,
if we don't feel that it's there, we'll let you know.
Yeah.
I just feel like in every trade conversation, this guy's got wide receiver 1 upside. If he gets the right amount of targets, we're going to talk about 2 of those guys today, which is kind of why we wanted to do this. So I think that's all. Does anyone else have anything we want to news related that we want to really talk about? I do want to touch on Dabble going to New York.
Yeah.
Just take a quick note because again, we talked a lot about coaches on Tuesday. So on Tuesday we were talking about coaches. So just today, with Dabble, this is how I think it's going to go down. As a quick note, I think Dabble is going to use and abuse Daniel Jones to see what works and what doesn't, and then he's gone. I don't think he the people like, oh, he's saying he loves Dan. He just got the head coaching job. That guy fucking sucks. So let's watch out for those conversations and trades because they're coming. They're coming for sure. I will say this makes Kadarius Toney a little bit more interesting, and it actually opens up a small potential window to move on from Golladay, right? Because Golladay will be there. You don't know how he's going to get used, but a better offensive system, same shitty quarterback, but we don't know how that's going to shake out. Again, we assume Shepard's gone. We assume some of the other guys, Slayton, they're gone. So it's Toney and Golladay for now. Anything else, fellas? Or we good to I can't speak properly. It's okay. I can't half the time either. I just fake it.
I want to think the best for the Giants because I mean, if you look back in 2017 and looked at this team right now, you'd think they were like they are so well built. They have multiple first round picks everywhere. They have the best running back prospect of all time. They have in 2017 an alpha wide receiver who had like 10 touchdowns. Like they have everything there. So I want to hope that Daboll is smart enough to go that this is what we need to build around and do everything right. But I don't trust Daniel Jones to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
I legitimately think that Daboll may be looking to move for one of these QBs in this class. Like there's commitment. The team has come out and said that Daniel Jones is their guy. And I think that's great. Like y'all drafted him with the 106. Y'all should be committing to this dude at least through his contract.
Yeah.
Like that's probably for the best, especially maybe if last year's class was happening now, we wouldn't be hearing this. But the Giants are in the position where I think that's where you need to start taking rookies or rookie QBs in this class. And if they fall in love with Pickett, Corral, some of these other guys, Carson
even Strong, man,
Carson. I'm going to be the lowest on Carson Strong out of our
statue. Strong
can't be lower than me.
Yeah, but
look, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. If they fall in love with a quarterback, like I think a guy like Corral and his skill set fits well with them. But I think that
is smart.
They have their QB for this year, I think, and they're going to ride Barkley, I think, into the ground this season.
You got to see him through his contract.
Right. So I think that this is where hopefully they trade down and then don't draft Kadarius Toney. I think hopefully they trade down or they draft some offensive line help. Right. I think hopefully that the staff that they have and they're bringing in there builds properly and maybe, not selecting skill position players when your team sucks. Okay, that's gonna do it for that. We're gonna move on, and we're going to come back with the next little bit there. So stay tuned. All right, we're back. So Tom Lee. This is a new little bit here for the people. Why don't you introduce everyone to it? What are we going to be handling here, and what's the point?
So what I liked was season 1, we got into a lot of conversations, but it was hard to put into what sort of conversations we're having. I thought, fuck it, let's just go with the whole conversation section. And what better way to have a lighthearted general dynasty conversation than to crack open what we call a Tawley in the US. Tom's got a Pepsi Max Tawley over there. Essentially, it's a large beer. Crack the top off one, have a chat. So we're going to punish a Tawley and have a chat about a few different dynasty assets and things that are happening.
Right.
Not as in depth and process driven as the hard yakka, but yeah, just kick back and have a bit of a chat.
Right. This is the more relaxed version of the hard yakka for sure. And I think it's important to have these two sides, right? Because I wouldn't welcome a ton of I wouldn't wish our Slack channel on a ton of people for how insane it gets with casual and hardcore conversation, but we really felt
at the same time.
I don't know what is happening in the old chat here, but we are going to not have porn spam pop up in the old bucket. It is everywhere these days.
He is not talking about our Slack chat. I feel like
not the Slack chat. Not
that
the
is
Slack
not
chat.
our show.
No.
Not
no.
yet.
Jesus Christ. They're invading the comment section here.
We just argue about Deontay Johnson.
We do argue. Well, no, Maddie argues about Deontay Johnson. But what I'm saying is it's important to recognize the two different kinds of conversations. So we're going to kick this one off. I want to start this one off with Rondale Moore personally. And then we'll move on to Gabe Davis after, because I feel like that's going to take up the bulk of the time on this program today. But I want to talk about Rondale Moore, who was another one of Billy's favorites, actually.
Don't make me do this.
In this draft. We're going to make you do it. In this draft that happened last year, I was saying the entire year that he was a colossal disappointment. I think he was a colossal disappointment. I stand by that statement now. He did not do what we thought he was going to do. He basically got screen passes, and that's it. One touchdown on the year was a broken play, that he took to the house. And in that offense, he couldn't get another one. I understand that AJ Green's a free agent. DeAndre Hopkins is old and busted.
Kirk's a free agent.
And Kirk is, but I think Kirk is back. I'm not buying Rondale Moore, but I also don't think that you can move Rondale Moore, because you're basically, if you move him for a mid two, you're basically just hoping for the next iteration of that. I'd rather hold him.
You're
re-rolling the dice.
Yeah. Exactly, Billy. Your face is sideways with that statement.
So I agree. Before I came on the show and started looking at this from the show sheet, I wholeheartedly agree that I would have agreed that I didn't think you could sell Rondale Moore. I thought you were either going to get a profit off him or you were going to end up dropping him in a year. But looking at ECR on Fantasy Pros, which for those of you who don't know, aggregates like the best experts in the industry and puts all their rankings together. I'm just going to give y'all a list of 10 names, and y'all tell me what percentage of these players you would take over Rondale Moore in a trade right now.
Okay, let's try that.
Kadarius Toney, Tyler Boyd, Gabriel Davis, Michael Gallup, DJ Chark, Kenny Galladay, Christian Kirk, Laviska Shenault, Corey Davis, Van Jefferson. Probably like
two or three, maybe.
Tony,
at least level.
But even that one is iffy.
Gabe
Davis probably. But we'll get into that.
So those are all the guys right after Rondale Moore and ECR right now. I think there's still a lot of guys below him that I think you could go out and sell him for, because a lot of people love him, and I'm one of them. Full-heartedly, I have defended Rondale Moore since the beginning. I think he's a phenomenal player. Yeah. I think he's an amazing athlete. The problem is the way Cliff fucking Kingsbury uses him.
He's terrible. He's terrible. But I mean,
don't get me started on Cliff Kingsbury.
I know,
but
you had front row seat.
Oh, years, man, years. But that's Rondale Moore is not Deebo Samuel from 2 years ago, where you throw him the ball behind the line. He works as a deep threat. That's what you want him to be.
Right.
And the way I see it right now, there's two potential ways that Rondale Moore can go from now on, and both of them equally scare me, because it's either really good or really bad. Mm-hmm. Either Rondale Moore is good, he is an NFL caliber player, and his size is not a problem, and he's able to separate, but Cliff Kingsbury refuses to do that because they drafted him to be a gadget player. Or Rondale Moore can't, and this is the only way they can get him the ball. And both of those equally scare me, because either he's going to be good and you should buy as many as you want, or he's going to be nothing.
Right.
And I think that terrifies me.
So historically, it's always if you're betting on him, you're betting against history, right? So a receiver that finishes wide receiver 67, he played most of the games on the year. He missed kind of the end of the year there, which is whatever. Didn't do anything in that high-powered offense. You're betting against history for an undersized wide receiver, right? He is undersized. I don't care how you want to look at it. He is.
Changes height, yes.
Yeah, he's not Tyreek Hill, so stop it with that. So he's on a team that has a coach that doesn't seem to be able to produce a second wide receiver as a consistent fantasy option.
Even though they play 4 wide a lot of the time.
Exactly. So, and even Toronto Days, no one's giving me more than an early second for Rondale. Seems appropriate value, but not sure I'd accept.
Exactly.
An early 2, if you're giving me 201, 202, I'd think about it. But again, you're just rolling the dice for another player in that situation. So it's tough to say. I'm not buying, but I'm also not selling at his current price. I think I'm just holding on and hoping to God. Tom Lee, anything more before we move on to Billy's what Billy's been excited about all week?
Billy's little bit. I've got a lot of Rondale Moore, right? We know I play a lot of value-based fantasy, so he was the end of the tier from the talented wide receivers. He was going at 203, 204 a lot in drafts, which is a sweet spot to pick up what should have been or could have been an awesome prospect. Problem is, like you said, that offense, whilst high-powered, has no imagination and doesn't know how to use his player. That's a concern, like Bill said. Do you buy him? You could if it's cheap enough. The best way to sell him is going to be to pair it and use the words we hate to use, which are upside, as an extra piece. So add him to a known value, increase the value of that deal, send it away for something that you actually want to bring in, whether you're downgrading in years or whether you're getting more talent or you're moving up a tier or 2. That'd probably be the only way I'd sell at the moment. Otherwise, it's just a hold and hope for now.
When you're playing the game with Rondale Moore, there's always been one player who's always quoted as like his ceiling. That's what they think Rondale Moore could be. And going into the draft, I thought that was a possibility in T.Y. Hilton. But I just don't see him hitting that level if this is what he is. Like if he truly can't separate and work as an NFL receiver, he is never going to hit those T.Y. Hilton numbers. Yeah. And I think I think it's really sad. I love Rondale Moore.
Yeah, that's a perfect word for it. Really sad.
Like it's at some point you have to cut your losses, and Rondale Moore is going to be an athletic specimen until he's 26. So are you cutting your losses when he's 23, or are you cutting your losses in 3 years and just losing that time?
Yeah, like, what are the losses? Yeah.
Yeah, like it's at some point it just sucks.
100%. The next player up on this list is kind of been he's kind of been a buzz topic for me for over a year now. This is a guy who kind of he did the same thing he did this year that he did in his rookie year, where he wasn't really a thing for the first half, and then down the stretch he scored a bunch of touchdowns.
The word flashed popped up.
Played well, yeah, exactly. And then same thing, and obviously capping it off with a 4-touchdown game against some backups and guys falling over themselves. So I want to, and this is going to lead into the next part of conversation in the next segment, talk about Gabriel Davis a little bit more thoroughly while still keeping it pretty casual. Billy, at the end of the show, your point was they have the oldest wide receiving core, right? And he scored 4 touchdowns in a game. Touchdowns are not the stickiest thing, but it seems like for him, they kind of find him. And you're right, they do have an older receiving core. Their offensive coordinator is now gone. Are you worried at all that that's going to affect? Like, what do you really think when you're looking at somebody like, a guy like Gabriel Davis, who right now is like, oh, he's going to be a top 24 wide receiver, easy smash this year. I don't think that's the case. But where are you looking at this point? Like you like him. What are you looking at this point?
Yeah. And this is crazy because I was off the Gabriel Davis train a year ago when he was getting those flashes. I remember Maddie was huge on Gabriel Davis, like getting him everywhere. And I've always been trying to keep track of what's happening with him. because he's an interesting player, but as everyone on Twitter has ever mentioned, he hasn't really produced. Like he had almost 600 yards his first year in 16 games with 7 receiving touchdowns. That's solid. But then he went down in yards, kept the same amount of reception, almost like the exact same stat line. Really weird, except with 50 less yards in his second year. So why are we all of a sudden jumping on the Gabriel Davis train? And I really wanted to talk about this because I think there are very few times where the actionable advice for an NFL team and the actionable advice for fantasy players are the exact same. And it's, what do you think of Gabriel Davis? So a lot of this comes down to me in terms of probabilities. That's how I always play this game. I always think of most probable outcome. That's what I'm going to bet on. And sometimes that bites me in the ass. Sometimes it's a great call. But the most probable outcome for Gabriel Davis is that both Emmanuel Sanders and Cole Beasley are gone next year. I think that's pretty fair. Cole Beasley might have a year left on his contract, but what we saw this year was that the Bills wanted to bet on their team this year, and they weren't sure if Gabriel Davis was anything. They were worried that Gabriel Davis wouldn't have the ability to do what he did in that playoff game in a playoff game. So they went out, they brought in veteran talents who have been there. Emmanuel Sanders, I believe, won a Super Bowl with Denver, and Cole Beasley, who's one of the oldest wide receivers in the league, but one of the most consistent, and Stephon Diggs, who Minneapolis Miracle. It's amazing. So they did everything right for what you expect. And instead what happened was Gabriel Davis put up I think the second best fantasy performance this year in a divisional round game against the best team in the league. So my biggest argument,
more to it than that.
Yes. There's more to it. But my biggest,
he got to burn DeAndre Baker and Sorensen in the secondary, but
that's a completely reasonable take. But what I'm saying is, I don't think there are people want to say he's a top 24 wide receiver. Some people are giving him crazy numbers. I don't agree with that. But I don't think there's 30 wide receivers in the league who could have 200 yards and 4 touchdowns in a playoff game. Like that's such a crazy thing. And to be able to do that as a second-year player who, for all intents and purposes, was coming off the bench. Like they benched him for Emmanuel Sanders. And once he started getting snaps again, he started producing. We saw that last year with the same deal. But for all intents and purposes, he was coming off the bench. And to do what he did just out of nowhere, it needs to be talked about. So he's 22 years old. He has every opportunity in the world to produce with arguably the second best quarterback in the league.
At the very least, a very aggressive offense.
Yeah. And
someone who's always going to go for the win and not settle
for now.
And I think he has every opportunity to be one of those players who in 3 years we're talking about, oh, well, the Bills had 2 top 15 wide receivers this year. Like we all know he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 overall. That's probably not in his range of outcomes. He's a big body wide receiver who has a history of catching touchdowns. And if Gabriel Davis went out next year and caught 10 touchdowns, I don't think anyone would be surprised.
Well, here's part of the reason that I don't like that approach, because so already you've heard McDermott, and we know we don't give a shit about coach speak, right? Especially offseason coach speak. We don't care as much. But one thing I do want to take note is that he immediately said we need more balance. We can't throw the ball that much. We need more balance. They're going to bring in a new offensive or bring up their pass game coordinator, so that upgrading to from their pass grading. Oh my God, their pass game coordinator to OC could negate that whole conversation, but we don't know. And it still took an injury to Emmanuel Sanders for this to be a thing. And when you watch Gabriel Davis play, he's very good player. He gets open. When he gets open, he can do big things. And but this is the same thing that happens to a lot of wide receivers in the NFL, especially in fantasy, where we fall in love with a guy who has size and speed and he gets open and he can score on any play, and they just don't ever hit in fantasy. I've seen this a lot of times. This is not a player that I'm actively searching for to add to my rosters because he's just not been able in 2 years now to take the next step. And who says they don't bring in another vet wide receiver? Who says they don't draft another guy? Like that's
especially in a Super Bowl window where they want to compete. It's smart from a team point of view to have that insurance policy of experience, known pass catching nous. I think what we're saying is it kind of reminds me of like a Kelvin Benjamin, right? Same team, probably same number for the same team, where in theory it should be good, but never really became anything. So it's appealing, it's fun to watch, it's cool to look at, it's a great stat. There is, and again we hate it, but there is upside to this guy. But is it going to be supported by the team? Is there going to be enough process-driven stuff to back up a purchase at a value? I don't know.
In 15 games, right, he couldn't average 9 points per game. Like
yes,
that's brutal. And that's with his second half, you could argue, was just as good as his first half was disappointing. So that he was better in the second half to his first half. And that doesn't include a 52-point game. But let's say we even add that. What does that bump his points per game to? 10, 11, right? Overall, I don't know the actual number because I can't add. So that is what it is.
I'm going to say it's 12, 13.
Right. I have these guys for numbers. All right. That's not me.
Yeah. Hang on. Let me do some math here.
Keep going, Tom.
But it's just a player that even with his biggest games and through the playoffs, he still wouldn't be up there with some of the guys, even like Hollywood Brown or some of these guys that are kind of looked down on in fantasy football. Robert Woods, right? Yeah. Like there's not enough there to get. You're betting on a lot of things lining up for him. And when I had this argument on Twitter months ago where I said I would take OBJ for the rest of his career than Gabriel Davis, was I kind of like being kind of a dick about it? Sure. But I'm still going to stick to that, right? Like I would rather have, let's say OBJ, if he goes to Kansas City, I'd rather have him over Davis, right? Even though they're kind of in the same role, almost in the same situation. He's just not a player that excites me, and I'm probably going to be wrong. But I'm going to be okay being wrong on this, especially at his current price, not even in just startups.
Yeah.
But there's not a lot of people that's going to trade you there, Gabriel Davis, for less than a late 1 or an early 2 with what he just did.
That's what I wanted to bring up as well, because we like talking about established rosters, is if you have him, you're not trading him away for probably less than a late 1. But you also can't buy him, because what sort of roster do you have that you're like, oh, I really need a Gabe Davis to add to my squad? It's like, well, where's he going to sit? He's going to sit straight on your bench and you're hoping he becomes something. And that sort of player is not going to be traded for a first. You know, it's a little bit different to like an Amon-Ra St. Brown, like where you've seen a bit of an explosion. You know where it's sort of headed. Yes, there's some range of outcomes that aren't great. But
ambiguity.
You've seen the talent. Yeah, some ambiguity of the situation. So, but you know, a late first for that.
Can't even spell that.
It's a decent dice roll. So,
I didn't know if I'd be able to say it.
So that's sort of what you're up against is like, well, which one did you rather have? Like an Amon-Ra St. Brown or a Gabe Davis? Because both of these guys in theory could be great assets. We've seen one do it in season where it mattered for people. We've seen one do it in the postseason where it didn't matter for people, but it was also really cool to watch. So these are two young assets where it's like, well, to me, you know, the range of outcomes, you could possibly have two very successful things, but what squad do you have? You're like, yeah, I want to take that risk.
It's how much are you willing to bank on those range of outcomes really coming through? How much do you want to spend to do it? Billy, what do you got?
So I know I said I was going to go get statistics. I didn't. I'm sorry. But a few things that I do want to reference, because we can talk about this all day and we have a full show sheet. So I don't want to go on too long about this. But I feel like when we talk about what's being made available to, yes, if you were offered a late first, smash accepted for Gabe.
100%.
Absolutely. I think I'm not going to battle that at all. But Gabriel Davis tests very well on per target and per reception metrics. And you can say that's because he has Josh Allen, but he's going to have Josh Allen until he's not a Bill. So that is a fine argument, and I also think it's fair, but I'm going to disregard that because I don't think it matters. But on a per reception case, Gabriel Davis is consistently top 12 in a lot of these metrics: yards per reception, contested catch rate. Those are things that you want to test out for receivers like Gabriel Davis, who are this big body player.
Sure.
That's what you want to look at. And the team is likely freeing up almost 180 targets next year. That's 112 from Cole Beasley and 72 from
Sanders.
Other guy, Emmanuel Sanders.
But that's assuming guys like McKenzie don't come back or take a bigger role.
That is just Cole Beasley and Emmanuel Sanders.
No, I know, but getting a bigger role, right?
Yeah,
Knox getting more targets, and they don't bring in anyone of note or draft someone.
We're not transferring the targets.
Sure, but we play but they could draft someone with literally every team.
But if you're losing two receivers, right, that took a lot of time, teams often replace those players.
Sure.
Yes.
There's 180 targets on the table. If Gabe Davis gets 40 of them, I think he finishes inside the top 30 next year. I think that's
fair.
take
top 30. I would take top 30 for sure. My point isn't that he's not good enough to finish in the top 30. My point is that reacting, and we're going to get to this at one point, but reacting to one game at the end of the season shouldn't be the thing that you're like, that's all I needed to see.
This seals the value, yeah.
Sure, and this goes back to what I was saying about what you think about him. If you thought Gabe Davis was a good player all this year, and I think you were completely validated in thinking that, and the team just opted to play Emmanuel Sanders, a more experienced player, over him. I think that's completely fine. I'm not going to debate you on that. I'm somewhere in the middle. But if you thought that Gabe Davis was a good player, and all of a sudden you see him on the grandest stage of them all put up 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, you need to shape your mindset around that. Because if you think he's a good player and that's your breakout game, you need to never trade that player.
I agree 100%.
That is the way you need to think. And this is why I wanted to talk about this so much, because I think this is a really unique situation. I think about this a lot like Rashad Penny. And a lot of people still had some faith in Rashad Penny. And I think that's
always truth.
Yeah, and I think that's great. And Rashad Penny rewarded them handsomely. But is it valuable to take your acceptance, what you believe a player to be, and them to prove that they are a good player, and then for you to just go, all right, I took my value, I'm out. That's what I disagree with a lot of these cases, is if you wholeheartedly, and this is not me talking about me, Tom, either of y'all, anyone else on Twitter. I'm talking about the person who is listening to this. If you are a Gabe Davis fan, you need to not accept a trade for a late first, because I think that's a good value. I think you should take that deal. But Gabriel Davis just showed you what his upside is.
Understood. There was a player even earlier in the year that had boom games and everyone immediately shot him up the boards. You guys know who we're talking about? Do you know who I'm referencing? Nope, not it. Damn. Tom Lee. Who is it?
Nope. What we got?
Rondale Moore.
Fucking Williams. Started off the year on fire, and he was immediate. I'm trading a first for him. I'm moving up the rankings. Second receiver in a high-profile offense.
Yes.
He's going to be prolific. He's going to be great. And what happened? He did the reverse Gabe Davis. And this is why I'm saying it happens all the time. It's just Mike Williams maybe is a couple of years older. And
people have been waiting on Mike Williams. Yeah.
It's not a whole, like, his top tier maybe is Mike Williams for Gabriel Davis. But I just think that looking out, like, with that one game and the short burst, right, and willing to put all of that consideration and high value assets into acquiring a player like that, more often than not shoots you in the foot for your dynasty teams.
My biggest argument, and I'll try and say this concisely so that we can move on. Is that me and Jacob constantly debate like the train of players, and a lot of it comes down to you just got shown what a player could do. This is not some metric. This is not anything. This is what he did in an NFL game. If you believe in that player, there is no reason you should trade them. Like there is no reason you should take a value cash out, anything. All probability signs, all like what the team is going to do, all those signs point to Gabe Davis having the opportunity to do this again. And if you believe in him, there is no reason you should trade him right now.
Nope, yeah. I agree. Look, we're gonna take a quick second. When we come back, we're gonna do some flashbacks for trades. We're gonna do some trade flashbacks. We're gonna do a hard yakka. We're gonna get our Aussie slang, and we're gonna get the heck out of here on a Saturday and send everyone off as happy as we can. Sit tight. Okay, so a very common thing on the Bird app itself and in Dynasty communities is celebrating trades as they happen, and it's not often enough done where you look back at those trades and really see if you're still happy with it or if you're just lying to yourself, because that's a very important thing. Tom Lee and I broke this down when we did this in season 1, is being honest with yourself, right, about your moves and your process, and being able to go back, look inside yourself and say, yeah, I should have done this and I should have done that. A lot of people who maybe only watch the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast and maybe they don't tune into the Fantasy Walkabout may not know that I very much stated that I regretted not trading away all Sam Darnold that I had, that I hunkered down, and we looked back at that process and figure out where that went. I wasn't able to look outside of my own bias or process and see kind of what I could have done there. So it's important to look back on these trades all the time and be honest with yourself, because otherwise you're just going to end up in a trap. So I want to look at some trades. This is one that I did. I traded my 106 for Cam Akers pre him being activated. This is when reports came out that he could be back for the playoffs, and I immediately sent this offer out as fast as I could. I took that shot, and I feel fantastic about this deal. Pretty confidently, I feel great about this deal. How many Akers deals did you guys wrap up? I just want to talk quickly about each one and why I like them. The reason I like this one specifically is I don't think there's a running back in this class that can do what Cam Akers is doing, and being on the team that he's on right now with the established role. I don't think there's a rookie that is as good a player in this class. So 106, I think, is the perfect spot for me value-wise to acquire a running back like Cam Akers. Tom Lee?
Perfect dice roll, right? We know the class. We know there's definitely not going to be 6 running backs, so you're not going to get any at 106. 106 still seems high, so you're going to entice the person who has him. It seems like you're still cashing out. And we talk about it, trades, you're trying to manage your risk factors. And if you're a Cam Akers owner before he came back, it's still a risk factor. So to cash it in for an asset is going to increase in value, it's kind of a win for both teams. But for yourself, if you can stay healthy this offseason with this role, it's a win. The upside and the win for Akers' side is bigger. But it's still not a bad trade for the guy who got the 106. That's still a good 100%. Process-driven move. Nothing wrong with doing that at the time. And it's not to say, oh, man, I got absolutely robbed. You didn't. You took a good base, like a good, solid, thought-through deal. You didn't roll the dice on, like, Akers for Leonard Fournette and someone else on a rebuild team in the hope that next year they'll be great. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, it's just a good, smart, process-driven, value-based deal that we love these sort of ones to look back on, because this is what value trading is kind of about. Makes sense to both sides. It's a shot that you're willing to take because you know the talent's there and you love the player.
100%. 100%. Billy?
Yeah, I got nothing strong to say on this that Tom didn't say. I mean, this trade a couple months ago completely was predicated on Cam Akers coming back and being anything close to what he was. And it looks like he is probably 90% the same, if not 100%. So it's an easy take.
Just has to stop fucking fumbling. We got Eli Mitchell, right? Elijah Mitchell or the 108.
Love this.
This deal is very interesting for me. Who made it? Was it one of us, or is this just one we pulled?
Yeah, this was one of us. It was in one of our leagues. Someone was looking to buy a running back. I had Eli Mitchell.
So you traded Mitchell for 108.
Yeah, I had an excess
I
had an excess of running backs, and I was happy with my room, and I thought I needed a bit more youth. And like I said before, an asset that I think will just continue to grow as the offseason progresses towards the draft. So why not?
When did you make this?
This was 2 months ago. So
okay, are you still as excited about or feeling just as good about this deal now as you were then, or no?
It's like I said to the guy in the chat, I actually like this deal for both of us. I think it made a lot of sense at the time. I like the asset. And for me, with value, I love pairing first with other things to get bigger pieces. So would I have been able to pair the risk factor of Eli Mitchell and another piece to get where I wanted to go? Possibly not. It really depends on the owner liking them. The 108, most owners are going to be pretty happy knowing they have it first because they can move it or use it. So
it's a little more fluid.
It's a little more fluid, and it's safe for now. So I like it for both of us still, and I think it's around about the value. If you want to buy or sell at this price, you wouldn't be too disappointed heading into draft season either way on this one at the moment.
I'm more bullish on Eli Mitchell. I'd be higher than the 108.
Yep, perfect. I mean, that's it, right? Like, it's pick your price, and if you're happy with it.
That's interesting because I'm not, and I thought I was the biggest Mitchell guy in the group.
So, and I think that's the key is we all love Mitchell, right, Bill? Like, we all love this player. So
here's my take: is in this class, I think there's 2 running backs that can touch Eli Mitchell right now, and there's probably going to be more, but as of right now, that's the way I see it breaking down. And I think they're both going to be gone before the 104.
Yes.
So, just straight, I think that's such good value to get Eli Mitchell for the 108.
I'm with the Eli Mitchell's going to have the job next year, but that's as much as confident as we can say about a Shanahan.
It's one of the only real risk factors in this whole deal is if Eli Mitchell doesn't have the starting role, it looks a little dodgy.
I need to do a deep dive on how insane Eli Mitchell's season was. Because I feel like it's not being appreciated.
Here's one that me and Billy actually did months ago.
I just added this one to be a dick. But
yeah, this is one that Billy and I did months ago. And it's funny you say to be a dick. Like, that's not what it's about, right? So it was Eli Mitchell for Chenault and a 23-2 on a team that I wasn't fully committed on going in with. I got Mitchell at a good price.
Yep.
Billy needed a running back. We went back and forth on this for a bit. Chenault turned out to be absolute fucking dog water. So this is the gamble that you take, right? So people will say trade away your running backs, your waiver wire running backs, get a young receiver and a pick. And that was the process. I'm not happy about this deal right now, but that's
you can see how it came to be, right? Like that's what it's all about.
And it's important to be very transparent with how we operate in our trades. So obviously we're going to give Billy the edge on that one. That's a quick little run through.
So I wanted to pull this statistic real quick.
Okay. We're running out of time, so let's.
Okay. Eli Mitchell had 5 games of 100+ rushing yards as a rookie. Only 5 players have ever done that since 2010.
It's disgusting how good he was.
Saquon Barkley, Jordan Howard, Ezekiel Elliott, Alfred Morris, Kareem Hunt.
Can't believe 2 of those are Alfred Morris and Jordan Howard.
And
poor Jordan Howard.
Elijah Mitchell played 11 games.
Yeah, he's unreal. If he can stay healthy, I think he's a lock.
But let's move on.
We're going to nix the last 3 trades. So what we're going to do here, Tom Lee, is the last 3 trades we are going to tweet out. And we are going to get to the people for them to talk about 100%. So, Maddie, there's work coming for you, buddy. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to go maybe 15 minutes. We'll push this just over an hour today to give people their Saturday afternoon, and we're going to get into the hard yak. If you're new to the show and new listening, because we've had our downloads, man, we appreciate everyone, but you guys are just keep coming back for more. So, we got some new listeners, obviously, so we're going to come back. I'm going to get Tom Lee to walk us through this, and then we're going to get right into it. and try to keep it less as ranty as possible. But sometimes it's really difficult for me.
It is.
We're going to be back in a second.
Yeah.
So look, people might be like, why are there the weird sound stuff? We like to give at least a little bit of an audio break from our voices to your ears to give us a second to catch our breath and collect our thoughts, and to give all of the listeners a second to collect their breath and collect their thoughts. First time I've watched. I love the show. Thanks, man. Like again, Dave. I mentioned this on the show with Drew that you've improved as a fantasy player, and I'm not it's because of us, but I mean you've been here since day one, so give you a shout out on that for sure. Tom Lee, walk the people through this portion of the program.
Hard yakka. So we were saying before, we've had all these watchers and viewers, and people are fanging. We're going to take a word from season 1. People are absolutely fanging for some process-driven content. Hard yakka, process-driven content, hard work, all the stuff you should be doing with your established rosters to make sure that you're doing your due diligence with them. Yes. And for the next couple of episodes, we're going to sort of walk through a couple of different things that are really affecting people's rosters out there, and they should be considering, or at least thinking about, how does this impact my team, and what can I use it for? So we're going to look at 2 things today that trigger at least Tom in this group. And then those 2 factors are recency or confirmation bias, and then just general arbitrary rankings. So talk us through, Tom, as a concept, these 2 things. So this is like Twitter. This is like Twitter analysis in a snapshot, right? If you looked across, you'll see a bunch of this generating stream.
Yes.
What's it called? Threads and content, right? So this is massive out there at the moment.
So if anyone has listened to the midweek tilts, this segment, I basically turned the hard yakka where I was ranting into an entire half-hour long show that I would do with John Arrington, where we just ranted about what we saw on Twitter, and that show will be back in March, I believe. So don't worry, that's season 2 of that's coming as well. But these ones just kind of drove me nuts in the time period that we were away on the walkabout. Recency and confirmation bias with very little context is, as I've mentioned earlier in this show, a really fast way to sync your dynasty rosters.
Yep.
I had this when I saw Darnold playing well. I went, fucking rights that I'm correct. There's no way I could possibly be wrong after this. I have seen it. I am confirmed. I am vindicated. And it came crashing down hard. It is so important to not see the first bit of confirmation. And look, we all want to be right on a player. And that's really what it comes down to, right? Especially if you're on the Bird app looking for information. And in these leagues, everyone has that guy in their league that drafts a player way higher than everyone else. And he's like, this is my guy. This is my fucking dude, Trey Sermon. And
Rondale
he's going to be successful. He's going to be great. And there's no blah, 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 blah. And then it doesn't work. And then they refuse to come out of it. Right. And then Sermon gets one game where a fullback gets an opportunity before him. And then they throw it 2 times and they get a penalty and he falls into the end zone. And they use that confirmation bias to go get that player for high-priced assets like a first-round pick, which we saw actively in a league when that happened, right? He doubled down on acquiring that player. And I think recency bias and confirmation bias are a fast-track way to screw yourself over in drafts.
Yeah.
When you're drafting, it can screw yourself over in trades at this time of the year, because as soon as the season's over, if your league had to trade deadline, people are immediately sending out offers for the players that they have on their roster that did well. How many times did you see Sony Michel go on the block, right? So when the season ended and you didn't have a team had a trade deadline.
Yep.
Right. And Rashad Penny and whatever, immediately. It was immediate. And recency bias has people buying into those players for top assets, guys. So the dangers of recency and confirmation bias is kind of something that I wanted to lay out there. I'm going to open the floor to you guys. That's how I feel. You're right. You got to be a paragon of objectivity. That is correct. That is a key point on this program and this brand. You have to be a paragon of objectivity. We never overcommit to one player for seemingly no reason ever. And it's okay.
Not once.
I often have to, not once. I often have to Google Dave. Don't worry about it. I'm going to open it to you guys. I'm going to start with Billy. You're the guest here, our first ever guest on the Fantasy Walkabout.
Honored.
Recency and confirmation bias. What does this scream to you for process, and how do you handle it?
I think a lot of it is you have to pair recency bias and confirmation bias, which we're all going to do. As much as we think it's inherently false, we're all going to do it. You have to pair it with a level of expectations. Like if you go in and you're thinking this player is going to be good, but they're probably realistically their ceiling is wide receiver 25 or something. If you think that, if you're trying to set that as your management, and all of a sudden their first 4 games they're the wide receiver 5, like it's good to have that confirmed. You thought this player was going to be good, they're looking good. But you also need to set and manage your expectations. So while you are confirmed that this player that you think is better than what the bulk of people think is doing really well, but you still are someone who was very high on this player and still thought there was no way they were going to be this good, that's still going to scream that player should be a sell to you.
Right.
And I think the most plain, pure example of this was Mike Williams. A lot of people in the offseason thought, you know what, Mike Williams is really, really shouting to be a top
Matty Terrace Marshall wide receiver one. I know. That's a great example. Great example.
But Mike Williams was screaming to be a potential, wide receiver 20. I think people were posting that like it was a hot take. And then the first couple of weeks, he was wide receiver 2 behind Cooper
It was
Kupp?
insane. And people were giving up first round picks, Jacob.
Yeah, which, I mean, to be fair, Cooper Kupp fell into that same exact route.
Oh, not if you listen to the Fantasy Walkabout, he didn't.
But it's a very similar scheme, but you just have to be able to separate confirmation bias from expectations. Because you may think that you may be higher than the bulk of consensus on a player, and they prove you right. But if they're overproving you right, you still need to be skeptical of that.
One way that I take that is, right, you're going to have your confirmation bias. We're all going to do it. Before you make a decision, add context to your confirmation. And if you still feel the same way, then do the deal. That's kind of a good way to navigate it to me. Tom Lee, quick before we move on to the second half of this, how do you handle recency bias? I know I'm going to take a stab at answering this for you. You immediately take advantage of it by going and dealing with that player because you're an absolute shark who sends out more trades than anyone else on planet Earth.
So the irony of this, right, is this is like the antithesis of something that can absolutely tank all the value that you've accumulated. So we can harp on about accumulate value through the off-season, the in-season, whatever. But if you get too excited because you've seen something that you thought you weren't willing to buy in on, and then you go and buy in on the higher price, it's a real easy way to lose a lot of value in your team, right? So that's the fear. That's number one fear. Number two fear is that if you are hyped on someone, but you never really got in on them yourself, and you're seeing on Twitter that there's all of this pumping up. These people are going, yep, we love it. Straight, we're pushing our ranks right up all the way to, wide receiver 2 or whatever. The reason they're that excited is because they already own a lot of this player, right? So you do not want to then go and buy in on that player at the new price because that is just a terrible usage of confirmation bias, right?
That's not true.
So even if you love the player, you needed to have them before, draft them on love, sell them on confirmation bias is the process for me.
Very nicely done. Very nicely put. What's funny?
Put that on a shirt.
What's funny? I actually think Mike Williams is worth it.
Oh my God, we're doing it again.
Did have a good season. No, Maddie, just stop it. Just stop it. Stop it. If he was, look, he would. Oh my God, no, just no. He had his breakout in the first parts of the season. Then you traded him, and then it was not. Just no. Mike Williams is not a buy. He's not. Right, a lot of people who have Mike Williams traded for Mike Williams, and they traded enough to get him that they're going to hold him. And we're not talking about, when we talk about stuff like this, is we're not talking about a player, because obviously you want to get every player if they're the right price.
Yeah.
That's an obvious statement. If they're if you get them at the right price, they're a buy. Sure. 208 for Mike Williams? Sure. Are you going to get that? Probably fucking not, realistically. Like, does it hurt to throw that trade out? Absolutely not. Would I trade Rondale Moore for Mike Williams? Absolutely. Are you going to get that? Not a fucking chance. So at least, for the most part, every player is a buy at the right value. Right. And I just don't think Mike Williams is a player that I'm going to actively seek out to try to win, because unless you're playing the new cool best ball dynasties, I don't care. He's as likely to sink you as a lot of his games too. Talking about a good season was he did nothing the whole game, and then he scores a 50-yard touchdown when they're up 20 points. And right, like, it's just not. Mike Williams isn't the answer.
Every time I hear stuff like this, I always think back to the fantasy footballers, because I remember going into this last year.
Shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. If y'all ever want to come on the show,
they could use our support.
I'm trying, but God.
I remember last year, Jason from the footballers said he wouldn't touch OBJ in a draft.
Yeah.
And every single comment under that tweet was like, OBJ versus some random player. Yeah, like, of course we're going to take OBJ over Tavon Austin or some shit. Like, of course. That's not what I'm saying.
I'm not saying trade a first for him. I get it. I'm not misunderstanding you at all. What I'm saying is that I don't care enough about Mike Williams to actively go and get him. And I'm not going to, and we're blanket statementing every player is a buy if their price is correct.
I'm just laughing at
I'm completely understanding you. I don't care about Mike Williams enough to actively say that he's a value or a buy. So the second half of this is arbitrary rankings. Mm-hmm. This drives me fucking crazy every couple of weeks on the Bird app, in the Slack channel, in leagues. I don't, and people ask me a ton, like, who do you have ranked, this receiver and that receiver? And I go, I don't have a ranking for them. They go, what are you, fucking crazy? I don't adjust my rankings every couple of weeks after a big game. Oh, I have this receiver, wide receiver 15 now, and I have this wide receiver 18. What good does that do me at the time? It doesn't. Tiers is all I care about. So, and obviously, right, and Billy, you actually developed a little thing there that you're working on, or are developing a little game, if you would, of players that you would like to select. I'm actually going to get that from you, because I'm going to do that today after this conversation.
Yeah,
and really work that out, because Billy is working on a bunch of really cool stuff here, but because he's a whiz kid. But I don't feel the advantage or see a benefit in constantly adjusting what wide receivers or what running backs I have against above this one or above that one, or I apply this number that makes them better than that one. I look at players in groups. That's how I do it. So, Tom Lee, you and I talked a lot about rankings and tiers. We did a tier building process in season 1, and in that we discussed that to have, let's say, a running back, let's say, just build a quick tier here, right? We're going to go Joe Mixon, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Saquon Barkley in one tier. So for those 4 players, they're the same rank to me, because I would take, if I could trade any one of them for one of the others plus something else, I would just do it. So their ranking of RB 4, 5, 6, and 7 doesn't mean shit to me. Now, saying inside the top 10, 100% that matters. Do I think they're top 12? 100% I think that matters. But within the tiers of that top 12 is where it gets important.
Yeah. And it's important to have tiers, because you need to account for different, like we talked about, different factors that can influence it. Age can be as relevant a factor as production. So, having someone who will be great for the next 10 years versus someone who is the best right now. You look at like Cooper Kupp starting to enter the top tier in wide receivers at the moment. Well, Cooper Kupp's 29, right? So he's not going to do it for, 20 more years, but Jamar Chase is. Could they both be in the same tier? Sure. Probably not, but you get the point, right? Like, there are different
1000%.
factors that influence these different tiers. So you need ways to equate two players that aren't directly comparable, because situation will dictate that one is more beneficial than the other one. And you need that subtlety. You need the nuance that tiers provide, rather than just saying this player is out and out better than this player.
It's how I avoid things like the CeeDee Lamb saga, right? CeeDee Lamb, Dynasty, top 3, top 4 wide receiver. And I know a lot of fucking people did it. I know it. A lot of people, Billy's one of them, right?
Yep.
CeeDee Lamb is this top guy, his age, it's his draft capital, it's who he's tied to, it's the offense, etc. And what's happened now? He's dropped out of people's top 12. You know how you avoid that? Build that into your range of outcomes and tiers.
And
so now, trading CeeDee Lamb for T. Higgins, sure, same tier to me. So if they're in the same tier, if someone sent me that, no problem.
Yeah. And if that's your confirmation bias where you still love that player more, go and do that. Like, go and capitalize on his new value. That's fine, because it's a slide down, not a push up.
Yes.
So, you know,
But
it gives you that freedom of,
that
they dropped a tier, but they haven't just, you know, they haven't exploded in value in a negative way. So
exactly. Billy, how do you look at things like this? Things like tier building, arbitrary rankings. Like I'm not someone that's going to argue if Lamar Jackson should be the dynasty QB1 when I think he's a top 5 dynasty QB, and I would trade any one of those other top 5, you know, for Lamar Jackson. Or
you'd be happy having any other on your team.
Yeah, with an extra piece. So how do you look at this?
This is a really hard one for me, because I have a lot of mixed feelings on rankings versus tiers. Like, in some cases, I think it's really smart to have, you know, the ability to say, I value one player over another. Like, I think that's completely fair. And I agree with what you're saying, Tom, is that when you're looking in tier-based rankings, it's smart to be able to say, I view these two people equivalently. And I think I have the same idea, and I believe I've actually spoken with, I want to say this was with you, Tom Lee, but it might have been Maddie.
That's what's up, Dave. That's a trade I like to see right there. Lamb for Cup in 208. That's easy fucking money.
Hey,
easy
man,
fucking money.
For you. But it was either Tom Lee or Maddie I was talking about this with. But, it was Maddie, because Maddie was trying to sell me Cup for A.J. Brown. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I had them in the same tier. And it was a really straightforward trade. And because you have them in the same tier, it's almost like trading to make trades.
Correct.
Like I may value CeeDee Lamb above AJ Brown. I may value AJ Brown above CeeDee Lamb. But you don't want to make trades just to make trades, because I hate to break it to you, if you claim the title fantasy analyst, you're wrong a lot. Yeah, we all are. Like,
that's what it is. Yeah, that's what analysis is.
We are all going to be wrong a lot. So you have to bet on probabilities.
Yeah, trading just to make trades is poison.
Yeah, like, I think that's the fastest way to do it, because you're going to be wrong. So instead of just betting on, like, I view tiers as confidence intervals. Like, we hit a point where
confidence intervals.
We hit a point where we are a lot more confident in these tiers that this player is better than this player, despite the fact they're ranked right next to each other. And being able to say that helps. And that's where I view tiers as, I'm willing to trade this player for this player straight. And that's my definition of a tier. Okay. Because I wouldn't
that's
do
interesting.
That. I wouldn't do that for a lot of players, because I'm an idiot and I'm wrong a lot of the time, and I don't trust my own analysis. That last part's not true, but
for us, when we talk about these tiers, it's always to get the extra added value. That's why you trade within a tier.
Happy to move. Yeah.
Like, you're not getting a same, like, so let's say Maddie and you are discussing, he wants A.J. Brown, he wants to give you Cooper Kupp because you say he's within the same tier. But I have no active reason just to do that.
Yeah.
Right. There's no, and when you're doing something like that, you still put age into account that might be in the same tier, but now I've got extra couple years within this tier and not without. So like, when you're looking at things like trading wide receiver in the same tier, if you're coming to me with that and they're in my same tier, I need a reason I need an extra reason to actually do this. Otherwise, I'm just trading to trade. I think that's a great point to make, Billy. Trading to trade is poisonous.
Yeah, the perfect AJ Brown versus Cup, for example, this year was that Cup was healthy, AJ Brown was a bit iffy. You're heading into the playoffs. One of them's going to win you a championship this year. One's still an awesome asset to have, right? So it's an absolutely fine switch within a tier to go from a rebuilding team to a win now team to try and make sure you steal the deal without losing out on value, right? There's nothing wrong with that trade, but you need the extra incentivization to do it. You need that reason for doing it. Otherwise, there's no point moving them for the sake of it.
Yeah, and that's the important lesson for arbitrary rankings. So if you make a trade like CeeDee Lamb for, let's say, T. Higgins, or trading T. Higgins for CeeDee Lamb because you think CeeDee Lamb is the wide receiver 4, and all of a sudden now you drop him to your wide receiver 14, you fucked yourself. If they're in the same tier, however, right, in the same tier, and now you made that trade, but you got something on top of whatever to get CeeDee Lamb, then sure, that makes a little more sense.
It's like insurance. It's like taking insurance out on a new asset. Like you just want to make sure you've got something there.
You want the extra piece on top, right? And you don't get that a lot with arbitrary rankings. No. So, Billy, why are you giggling over there?
I just saw this dumbass tweet and I don't understand it.
All right,
because I was going to pull something else. So to give credit, this was 4 verts on Twitter, and I can't show you this. Like I can't. But it just says Tom Brady tasting a strawberry for the first time.
Oh my god!
And I don't understand it.
This is the kind of thing that happens sometimes. We get no. He doesn't eat sugar. That's his. That's
TB12. Yeah, TB12.
Yeah,
but it's just a picture of Elmo in front of a mushroom.
I'm gonna end it on this because you sent it. I get it. We saw 129 targets. He went over 1,100 yards, but I don't care. Right? He falls into that category, and Mike Williams is a great example, right? If you can get him for that price, then it's obvious. But most times when analysts and people in the Bird app and podcasts say you can go and get this player at this dirt cheap price, chances are you're actually not able to. Which is why I said that if you can get it, it doesn't hurt to send the offer out, right? But he's not someone that I'm going to actively negotiate to go and grab. That's the point. And that's something that we hammer home on the show. We had a lot of great examples, but that's going to be it. Tom Lee, you know how we would like to end this bit. It's season 2. I hope you came prepared.
I've got plenty this year. Don't worry about that.
Oh, good. Let's go. I'm ready. I've been using them. I've been using all of the Aussie slangs in as many leagues as I have with other members of the Aussie family. So hit us with some before we get into final thoughts.
So we want one that can be at least a little bit fantasy relevant, right? And you guys may have heard of it. You may have seen it used. It may become a Twitter thing. But the one for me this week is Fig Jam. Are you guys familiar with Fig Jam?
No.
You heard of this, Bill?
Absolutely not.
You understand what Fig Jam is?
I mean, I know what the food is.
Ah, no. So Fig Jam stands for fuck, I'm good. Just ask me. So it's kind of like victory lapping, right?
Yeah.
So my god!
So if you're flexing on someone, Fig Jam.
Oh my god, Fig Jam.
There's
your
t-shirt.
Good. Just ask me.
Yeah.
Holy! I might change my gamer tag to that. my gamer tag is IMBQ for I make bitches quit, and I think it might have to go to Fig Jam now. Fuck, I'm good. Just ask me. What an Aussie! We're bringing you top tier words and phrases to bring to your leagues. That's part of it. Look, that's going to wrap up the Full Tilt Dynasty podcast presents the Fantasy Walkabout Season 2, Episode 1. Saving Fig Jam in my brain now. That is what is up. Dave, final thoughts. Billy, how was your time on the Fantasy Walkabout for the first time?
No, this was a grand old time. I got to swing by again sometime.
100%. Tom Lee, final thoughts before we get out of here?
Final thoughts. What do we always say about Twitter? It's too early in the offseason to be throwing hate around. So be chill, be calm. Don't ever react. 100%. Look into some rookies. We'll start looking into the rookies in the future weeks. So
let's get
throwing some questions our way. Yeah. Start.
Look, it's going to do it for our show. As always, we're happy to bring a little bit of different content to the fantasy spectrum because I think that this is and maybe it might even be a niche community, but talking about established dynasty value is super important, and learning more about yourself, staying in touch with your league mates throughout the offseason to get deals done. These are all things we're going to get into. And we learned a lot last year. I learned a lot about my play style. It's really helped me set up how I am as a player. It's changed my philosophies. I get called the old guy, right? I scream when new things pop up. I just have a process that I've now built and feel very strongly about, right? And it's good to have differences of opinions and people able to talk about it. And we're going to get into more things like how to negotiate, bad faith trading, how to deal with the annoying trade partners, bad trade offers, how to get a deal done after. We're going to go back through all that kind of stuff, all of it. But like I said, that's going to do it for us today. Look, everyone tweet at Budgie Smugglers so they will respond to me. We're still actively trying to get our Budgie Smugglers sponsor. They have not responded to me. So everyone get on the Bird at, send them emails to reply. We want the custom Budgie Smugglers so Tom Lee can really promote that and walk down the beaches.
You thought Jacob was going to be a meme on Twitter. Just me and a pair of budgies. That's the issue.
Exactly. So holler at them, get it done. We need that. I love the established Dynasty League strategy. It's not talked about enough in our opinion. That's going to do it for us. Thank you everyone for tuning in on your Saturday. I want everyone to remember that clear eyes and full hearts can never lose, and that your best days are spent tilting. Good night, everybody. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.
Take care.